You can't shoot them in the head against Trump's apparently untrained, totally out of their depth paramilitary dress-up immigration agents who, among other things, are now regularly tear-gassing Chicago police officers. These likely massive protests tomorrow are coming at a time of pronounced weakness for him and his administration. And I think the mainstream media doesn't always talk about this. I think one of Trump's great geniuses, one of the things he's actually truly great at, is getting the media to cover things he wants them to cover. Even if he can't always get the kinds of coverage that he wants, he can almost always get the topics covered that he wants. And so because of that, I think some of the ways in which he is at a profound moment of weakness in his presidency have just kind of slipped by and not made the headlines. But I think if you're being real and you take a wide aperture look at what's going on with him right now, that's the pretty obvious bottom line. I mean, here's just one piece of that. So today's Friday. Usually every Thursday, we get the jobs numbers, right? We get the jobless claims data. That usually happens every Thursday. On the first Friday of every month, we're supposed to get the data on the number of new jobs created in unemployment. We're not getting that now, apparently because of the government shutdown. The first Friday after the shutdown started, they reportedly had that jobs report ready to go and they could have released it, but they didn't for some reason. That's not exactly a sign of strength. Private sector job indicators around the same time, payroll data and stuff, indicated that the jobs numbers right at the start of the shutdown might actually be horrific numbers. And so who knows, maybe that influenced Trump's decision about not allowing that data to be released, even though they had it right at the start of the shutdown. We'll never know, right? Before the shutdown, Trump fired the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics when the jobs numbers started looking really bad. Well, now Trump has quietly withdrawn the nomination of the guy he picked to replace the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. He's withdrawn that nomination and nobody new has been named for that job. Trump has also quietly just withdrawn his nomination for the person he wanted to put in charge of veterans benefits at the VA. That nomination has been pulled as well. Trump has also quietly just withdrawn his nominee for a senior oversight position at HUD. That nomination's been pulled as well. Trump has quietly just withdrawn his nomination for the person he wanted to be ambassador to Serbia. That's gone now, too. Trump has quietly just withdrawn his nomination to lead the CFTC, the Commodity Futures Trading Commission. That nominee then posted online about Trump donors telling him to, quote, rectify, meaning spike, a CFTC case against them, against the Trump donors. He says he refused to do that, and he says that's why his nomination was pulled. Trump's deputy White House chief of staff just quit and left. The chief of staff to Attorney General Pam Bondi just quit and left. They just removed the 25-year-old Fox News producer. They put in charge of the commission that's supposed to run the America's 250th birthday celebration. How come all these people are being pulled? How come all these nominations, controversial for one reason or another, are all just being yanked? Can't stand the bad press? Can no longer take it, political capital-wise, to have unpopular or problematic nominees pushed through the news cycle? You don't feel strong enough to bear that brunt anymore the way you used to? Today, this was a large protest on the lawn at the main campus quad at the University of Virginia. This is the protest there today with students and faculty and staff telling the UVA administration that they should refuse to sign this deal with the devil compact with the Trump administration to supposedly get special preferences in federal funding if you agree to Trump's ideological strictures on your academic freedom. This was the protest today at UVA, telling the UVA administration, don't you dare, do not sell us out, don't you sign that thing. This was today. And then this, tonight, was the statement, in fact, released by UVA's president, saying, okay, we're not doing it. We have told the Trump administration no. Remember when it was just Harvard standing up and all the other universities were too intimidated to say no? Well, now even the ones that caved before or that signed deals before with Trump places like Brown University, even those schools have now learned that maybe signing deals with Trump is not a good idea. Trying to appease him, trying to stay on his good side is folly. It just shows weakness. It invites him to come back and bully you some more. And so in quick succession, we have seen MIT and Brown and Penn and USC and now UVA as well. They've all told the Trump White House, no, we're not doing it. We're not signing on to your little compact to restrict our academic freedom and our ideological freedom of movement in order to try to keep you happy. No, we are not doing it. We have learned our lesson. Forget it. The Pentagon press corps, all the real reporters at the Pentagon, even the ones from Fox News, this week all walked out in unison, telling Trump, no, we're not going to do it either. We're not going to agree to just write down what you tell us instead of doing actual journalism. No, we are not doing it. They walked out in unison, en masse. They told him no. In Chicago, we're seeing spontaneous protests in every city, neighborhood, and in every suburb against Trump's apparently untrained, totally out of their depth paramilitary dress-up immigration agents who, among other things, are now regularly tear-gassing Chicago police officers. A federal judge has now ordered Trump's federal agents from the bench, quote, you can't deploy tear gas. You can't use flashbang grenades. You can't drive a car through a crowd. You can't shoot them in the head with pepper balls. The judge has ordered that Trump's federal agents in Chicago must not only change their ridiculous tactics, they must now wear body cameras, and they must have them turned on. A different federal judge had ruled that the National Guard cannot be deployed to Illinois. That ruling has now been upheld by a unanimous 3-judge panel of a federal appeals court. In Washington, D.C., where Trump installed yet another Fox News host to be U.S. attorney in that city, they tried once, they tried twice, they tried 3 times to convince a grand jury to bring a felony criminal indictment against one D.C. resident who was part of a protest there. All 3 times, the grand jury refused to move ahead with those felony charges. Jeanine Pirro's office then instead finally charged this young woman with a misdemeanor for which they put her on trial. That was yesterday. The jury laughed them out of the courtroom.
Something is happening in America tonight. Not the chaos Trump loves to create, but the quiet, deliberate sound of doors closing, one after another, courts' allies, institutions, every one of them locking him out. Rachel Maddow didn't shout. She didn't rage. She simply laid out the evidence, piece by piece, like a prosecutor who's seen this movie before. And what she showed was the collapse of a man who thought he could bend the system forever. Trump built his empire on intimidation, fear, and chaos. But now, when he bangs on the doors of power, no one answers. Judges deny his requests. Prosecutors push forward. Even his once loyal allies hesitate before speaking his name. Maddow called it the hardening of pushback, a phrase that feels almost physical, as if the walls of democracy themselves are solidifying against him. She walked viewers through the indictments, the testimonies, the internal fractures inside the Republican Party. Each clip, each headline, another nail in the coffin of Trump's myth of invincibility. What makes Maddow's analysis sting isn't the anger, it's the precision. While Trump yells about witch hunts, she points to paperwork, signatures, and court dates. Reality, she exposes how his defenses, legal, political, even emotional, are crumbling. Trump's lawyers are exhausted. His money is bleeding out through endless trials. His once mighty political base, divided, some still loyal, others just tired. And yet Maddow reminds her audience, this isn't just about Trump, it's about whether America's institutions still work. Can the rule of law stand against the cult of one man? Her answer, delivered with quiet conviction, yes, it can. She brings up the courtroom footage, Trump sitting, expression blank as his own words are read back to him. Promises, threats, boasts, all weaponized against him now. For years he mocked the system. Now the system is speaking back in the language of subpoenas and verdicts. There's something poetic in it. A man who rose by exploiting every weakness now brought down by the one thing he never understood, accountability. Maddow doesn't gloat. She simply observes like a historian watching a chapter close. Across America, the pushback hardens. Judges refuse delays. Officials reinforce election security. Even conservative voices begin to say what they never dared before. Trump is weak. Maddow shows the dominoes. One indictment leading to to another, one ally turning witness, one door after another slamming shut. You can almost hear the echo of those doors, a sound that must terrify him. It's not rage fueling this pushback anymore. It's resolve, the calm kind that comes after years of chaos. Americans are tired. Tired of the lies, the noise, the endless circus, and Maddow gives voice to that exhaustion. She looks straight into the camera, not shouting, but speaking as if to history itself. She talks about what happens when democracies stop being afraid, when they stand up to bullies, no matter how loud they scream. That's what's happening now, she says. The era of fear is ending. For years, Trump ruled by spectacle. Now, the spectacle is consuming him. Courtrooms instead of rallies, lawyers instead of cheerleaders, and headlines he can't control. Maddow walks viewers through the irony. How the man who once said only the weak get caught now finds himself trapped in his own web. She calls it poetic justice, the arrogance, the lies, the endless denial. All catching up, all closing in. She cites statements from judges describing Trump's conduct as reckless, dangerous, unconstitutional, not pundits. Judges, the very system he thought he could manipulate, now writing his political obituary in legal language. Even his business empire feels it. Banks stepping back, partners distancing themselves, properties under scrutiny, every foundation of his power cracking. And through it all, Maddow narrates not with anger, but with a strange calm certainty. That calm is what makes it devastating, because Maddow doesn't have to destroy Trump. He's doing that himself. All she does is hold up the mirror, and for once, the reflection isn't larger than life. It's small, tired, weak. This is what accountability looks like. Not fireworks, not vengeance. Just quiet, relentless justice doing its work. So as the doors continue to close, one courtroom, one ally, one institution at a time, Maddow ends her broadcast the same way she began, with facts. No drama, no spin, just the truth, standing firm against the noise. And as the screen fades to black, you can almost feel the shift in the air. Trump's era of untouchability is over. America finally is pushing back. Maybe, Maddow suggests, this is what healing looks like. Not easy, not fast, but inevitable. Because when truth stands its ground, even the loudest liars eventually fall silent.
And acquitted her yesterday afternoon after about a nanosecond of deliberation. As Trump continues to personally order up criminal indictments against people he doesn't like, James Comey, Tish James, now John Bolton. Tonight, 2 more veteran prosecutors have reportedly been fired after refusing to bring what they believe to be a baseless prosecution against New York Attorney General Tish James. Yesterday, in that district, in the Eastern District of Virginia, a judge who is Trump appointed took a moment, a dramatic moment from the bench at the conclusion of a big national security case, took a moment from the bench to praise James Comey's son-in-law, who recently resigned as a prosecutor in the Eastern District of Virginia when that office charged his father-in-law, James Comey. The judge praised the prosecutor from the bench, saying, quote, how saddened he was that I will, quote, not have the privilege of him appearing in my courtroom again. He said he was disheartened to know that the Department of Justice and our nation will be deprived of his obvious talents and integrity going forward. He said, quote, lawyers who stand up for the rule of law provide an essential contribution to the cause of freedom. The judge said, quote, what makes our country great is that we are a free country. And our great nation serves as a beacon for freedom around the world. But freedom and the rule of law necessarily go hand in hand. You cannot have one without the other. Again, a Trump-appointed judge making very pointed comments from the bench at the conclusion of a national security case in EDVA. That comes in the wake of another Trump-appointed federal judge issuing just a rip-snorting opinion, not only blocking Trump from sending troops to Portland, but really eviscerating him in very sharp language for even having the temerity to try it.
The days after Maddow's broadcast felt different. You could sense it in headlines, in press briefings, even in the tone of once friendly news outlets. Something in the air had changed. The fear that once silenced criticism was gone. Inside the Republican Party, quiet conversations turned into public defections. Lawmakers who once defended Trump with fire now spoke with distance, hesitation, caution. They could see what Maddow had warned about. A man who demanded loyalty but offered none in return. His legal walls were collapsing. collapsing. Judges dismissed his excuses. Former aides testified under oath. The myth of the unbreakable strongman was now just paperwork. Evidence numbers, transcripts, audio files. It wasn't television drama anymore. It was history being written, line by line. Maddow returned to the story night after night, each segment a new layer peeled away. She wasn't just chronicling Trump's decline, she was documenting the resilience of American democracy. Every new ruling against him was proof that the system, though battered, still had life left in it. Trump's strategy had always been chaos, but chaos, Maddow said, only works when people are afraid. And now they weren't. The prosecutors weren't, the courts weren't, even his followers. They looked at him now and saw not strength but desperation. She highlighted how Trump's public appearances had changed. The long, rambling speeches sounded tired. The insults lacked energy. The crowds looked smaller, the applause weaker. The man who once dominated the stage now seemed trapped by it, performing for an audience that had already started to move on. Maddow pointed out something deeper. This wasn't just political collapse, it was moral exhaustion. America had spent years inside Trump's shadow, arguing, dividing, shouting. Now it was stepping out. The country was beginning to rediscover its own reflection again. The pushback hardened not just in courts, but in culture. Late-night hosts mocked him openly again. Newspapers stopped covering every outburst. The noise that once made him relevant now made him look ridiculous. And Maddow, with her calm tone and sharp delivery, showed how ridicule was the one thing Trump could never survive. For decades, he thrived on fear. Fear of his power, fear of his followers, fear of being his next target. But once the fear vanished, so did the illusion. He wasn't a kingmaker anymore. He was a man with too many lawyers and not enough believers. Maddow played clips of his speeches, the contradictions, the lies, the sudden moments of confusion, and let them speak for themselves. No commentary needed, just silence between each clip, letting the weight of his unraveling fill the air. She reminded viewers that history never ends neatly, that men like Trump don't fade quietly. They thrash, they blame, they rewrite the story. But the truth, she said, has a way of outlasting even the loudest liars. Every week, the evidence grew thicker, every ruling tighter, and through it all, Maddow's message stayed the same. This is what justice looks like. Not instant, not perfect, but real. Behind the scenes, former aides began cooperating. Emails surfaced, recordings leaked. The walls that once protected Trump's secrets were now protecting the nation from him. Maddow used a simple phrase that resonated far beyond her show. The doors are not just closing on Trump, they're locking from the inside. Meaning the system wasn't just rejecting him, it was sealing him out for good. Even his own rhetoric betrayed him. Each attempt to paint himself as a victim only deepened his image as weak, cornered, powerless. Maddow dissected his language, showing how the man who once controlled the national narrative now couldn't even control his own. She compared his behavior to the classic arc of fallen autocrats, how they always mistake attention for power and outrage for loyalty, but eventually both run out. And when they do, all that remains is the silence of consequence. Trump's empire, built on spectacle, was collapsing under the weight of reality. The lawsuits, the debts, the betrayals, all piling up faster than his lies could cover. And Maddow, night after night, connected every thread until the pattern was unmistakable. It wasn't bad luck, it was accountability catching up. Then came the moment that defined it all. A clip played of Trump leaving court, head down, walking past reporters without a word. For a man addicted to the spotlight, that silence said everything. Maddow didn't even need to narrate. The image spoke louder than any commentary. That was the picture she wanted America to see. Not a tyrant rising, but one fading. A man once surrounded by crowds, now surrounded by consequences. And she reminded her audience why it mattered. Because every democracy faces its test. Every nation must decide if truth still matters when lies are easier to believe. And this, she said, was America's moment to decide.